Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks for coming, everybody. Really appreciate that. So, first of all, my name is Caroline White, and I'm the founder and director of Invest in Play. But Invest in Play is actually only 2 years old, and I actually spent 30 years working in the National Health Service, running a multi-agency early intervention service across Manchester. And I'd like to set the context for why Invest in Play even exists. So I was born in 1970, and that was the same year that Forehand and McMahon first published their book, Helping the Non-Compliant Child. I often wonder if they wrote it for my mum. It is possible, because when Mum took me to nursery for the first time, apparently I screamed for 3 hours non-stop. And when she came back to pick me up, they said, "Don't bring her back." Oh. I hope you don't feel the same after the next 20 minutes. But basically, most evidence-based parenting programs that we have today are still based on the work of Forehand and McMahon and other people around that time. So at the age of 26, when I qualified as a clinical psychologist, and after 8 years of training, I wasn't trained in any evidence-based parenting program, and yet I was meant to deliver one in my first job. So that already tells us something about the problems with the dissemination of good practice. So I spent most of my adult working life in the NHS getting trained in evidence-based parenting programs, delivering them, becoming a trainer in incredible years, and then I was lucky enough to work with lots of other organisations, both nationally and internationally, to help them with their implementations of evidence-based programs. And one of the most fascinating things about that experience is, regardless of the population of that country, their socioeconomic status, or even their budgeting streams, the challenges to successful implementation of these programs were largely the same. So, at the age of 54, I know you've already done the maths, at the age of 54 then, I got this opportunity because the Lego Foundation approached me with some funding to say, can we create a brand new evidence-based parenting program based on all of what we already know over the last 50 years and do it better and differently? So we set out to design a program that is built for scalability, sustainability and cost effectiveness. And our ambition really is to deliver interventions which are effective, cost effective, scalable, sustainable. You'll hear me say that a lot. Okay, so I'm fortunate to work with these other 4 amazing people who I've actually known personally over the last 15 to 20 years, and they've all got vast experience in the implementation of evidence-based parenting programs in their countries and other countries. In fact, Jamila Reid was the Director of Operations at Incredible Years for 20 years before she joined Invest in Play. So I have this international team, small but mighty. We work very hard and fast, and together we have developed a program. So some of these facts and figures to start with won't surprise you, but it's just to set the scene and the context. We know that there are high rates of mental health problems in children globally. We know the prevalence of ADHD is on the increase. We know that there are too many children experiencing interparental conflict at home. And we also know, because we've got decades of research telling us this now, that if you start off early in life with these difficulties, without intervention, they continue right through into adulthood. So as an adult, you're more likely to have a teenage pregnancy, more likely to be misusing drugs and alcohol, you're more likely to be socially excluded, to not get a good education, and the cycle continues. And for parents at the time of managing children, they are experiencing this daily conflict, they often have mental health problems themselves, and again, we know the escalation of those difficulties. So we could do a whole series of talks about why parents are so important, but we certainly know that systematic reviews tell us that parenting behaviours are directly associated with children's risk of mental health problems. And that's not to say that parents are to blame for those problems at all, but we do know that one of the best things that we can do to help children is evidence-based parenting programs. And we literally have decades of evidence to support this. So we really need to ask ourselves this next major question. So what is the issue we are trying to solve at Invest in Play? Well, the reality is that after 50 years of having evidence-based programs, the research tells us that only 1% of those people needing an evidence-based intervention ever receive one. I'm going to say that again. After 50 years of evidence-based programs, only 1% of the people who need one ever receive one. Yeah, it's not good enough, is it really? So I always liken this to kind of having the best COVID vaccine in the world and just not getting it into people's arms. And we know that there are issues around that. But when we mobilise, we can also make a difference and do things differently. But the statistics don't stop there, because we also know that even if services do choose an evidence-based programme, very few of them actually implement them well enough to have any impact on child outcomes. We then also know that if you do deliver these programmes, anywhere between 20 to 80% of the families drop out before the intervention is completed, with many of them receiving less than half of the intervention. So you can see how little impact we must be having on families when you look at the research in total. So we've really considered a lot around implementation science, which is still a relatively new area of research, but we have learnt a lot from it. And I think sometimes we pay lip service to implementation science. So for example, implementation science says that if you're going to train someone in an organisation to do these programmes, you should train at least 3 people. 3 is the magic number, apparently, if you're going to get actually long-term change. But the problem with that is I've seen lots of services train more than 3 people, but if you have no access to a budget and no power in your organisation, you're unlikely to make that programme sustainable, no matter how much of a champion you've been given as a label. So we don't actually implement the science around implementation science with evidence either. So we've kind of got this double problem. So when we set out at Invest in Play, we had some core principles we wanted to follow. We wanted to make a programme that was easier, that was scalable, sustainable and cost effective. Long term, we want to have some core principles that any adult around a child can impact on their well-being and their development. And we will create eventually a range of universal targeted interventions. But we've started with a core programme, and that core programme is an intervention which will help families with the biggest levels of need. And part of that is to demonstrate our evidence base and tackle the highest levels of needs. But to keep the cost of the programme down, rather than create a programme for 0 to 2-year-olds, 2 to 4-year-olds, 4 to 6-year-olds, 6 to 12-year-olds, the adolescent programme for ADHD, programme for autism, programme for children with 2.5 bicycles. That's the way to make money, quite frankly, with these programmes. But we know that the same strategies work for all children aged 2 to 12 years of age, so why not have one programme that covers that? And then we can have add-on modules to make it more tailored and bespoke for particular audiences such as ADHD and autism, and that is how we have done it. And we want to build on the core competences of children. So we don't talk about fixing broken children and challenging behaviour. What we really want to do is build on their strengths so that everyone reaches their full potential. Now, I'm going to have to whiz through some of these because I want to get to the really important bit. But these are our development principles. So obviously, we've only chosen evidence-based content, but we've also looked at the research and evidence around parental engagement and cultural acceptability, because this is absolutely crucial if we're going to reach all families. And we've thoroughly looked at the research around implementation science too. Of course, the programme uses video-based materials because we know that's what works to change behaviour long term. We know that skills practices need to be embedded in the intervention to change parents' behaviour long term, and we know that it needs to have a collaborative approach. So all those key elements are all designed based on the evidence. And then this is our 6 bricks for kids model. So a lot of these strategies won't surprise you, but you can see it's more strengths-based. And when we looked at the evidence, the research said there was one core thing missing from parenting programmes, and that was parental self-efficacy. So when we deliver the programme, we start with the red brick at the bottom there, which is a cognitive behaviour model around thoughts, feelings and behaviour cycle for parents. This teaches them their self-regulation and their understanding of why their child behaves the way that they do. And this we're seeing has had a significant shift in both parental engagement, but also the outcomes that we have had measured. All the other things I'm sure won't surprise you, but I can tell you that all of the different strategies are based on the latest research and evidence. We know a lot more about brain development now than those programmes that were built over 30, 40 years ago. We talk about children differently, and when we worked with Iceland recently, they said that, you know, what they'd seen of time out in some of these older programmes actually contravening to the UN rights of the child. So we've really had to update all of the core content as well. So this is the main thing of what I want us to think about and why we've done what we've done. So we've looked at the research on why are evidence-based interventions so hard to scale, and then we've tried to find solutions for those things. So first of all, a lot of those programs are outdated. So what we've done, as I've said, is built on the latest evidence-based. We have a very different approach to the way we talk about children, think about children, and it's all built on the latest and newest research. Another criticism of evidence-based programs are that they can be quite rigid. Now, they need to be rigid sometimes. We know that manualised programs work because we want people to follow it to model fidelity and do it the right way. You can't just make it up as you go along. We've had too many people take bits of different models and just do their own version, so we know that doesn't work. So what we need to do is get the balance right between a manualised program or a model fidelity to stick to around what works in programs, but then building in some kind of flexibility that allows the program to fit the community, the organisation, the individual family, whoever you're working with. So rather than have like an implementation team, we see ourselves as collaboration teams. So when we have the program, and I'll show you a little bit more about the program in a bit, but when we have the program, we want to know how do we need to shift the model in order for it to fit your organisation or your population in that particular context. So there are some things that are non-negotiable, because the active ingredient in the drug that tells you it works, that can't change. But certainly in terms of its delivery, that's where there's some flexibility that can be built in. So we have this really kind of flexible co-design model where we co-design the materials with each of the countries that we're working with. And then we've also built the system so that it's very easy to update. So I know, for example, that Norway, who've had a national implementation of incredible years for about 20 years, it costs them about £100,000 to translate one manual, and they deliver 6 different programs. And then the program gets updated. And that's another £100,000 to translate the next manual. And they still have a program with American videos with Norwegian subtitles. So how does that fit your population or your community? So all of our programs are online, they're easy to up to date. We can change one video in the program if it becomes outdated, or if someone says, well, that doesn't really fit for us, or it's not quite right. We can keep that up to date because we know things change and we know we need to keep things up to date. So that's part of the flexible co-design from the outset. Oh, press the wrong button, do apologise. And these are just some of our collaboration partners. So obviously we work in partnership with the Lego Foundation, who kindly fund our project. But then as we work with different countries, we look for a lead organisation to actually co-create the materials with us. So in Denmark it's a Centre for ADHD, and they're like a national provider now of Invest in Play. And then in Norway, who've chosen the programme now to roll out nationally, there's 3 regional centres who've pooled budgets in order to co-create the materials, so they pay for that part of the co-creation, and we do the training as a response to that. And then we work in partnership with them. So in Norway, they really wanted their Sami population who live in the Arctic represented in the materials. They felt that was very important. So we actually filmed the videos in 2 locations. First in Middle Norway, and then flew up to Tromsø in the Arctic, literally just filmed about 7 or 8 videos with Sami families. So this gives each country, organisation, population, it can be large, it can be small, it could be a smaller organisation. They have a say in how those materials come across, so it's not just a blind translation. We've worked with the Department of Health in Slovenia, who now have a national rollout, and we also have the Ministry of Education in Iceland, who are also doing national rollout, with the university doing some research alongside that. And then in the centre there, Invest in Kids is a not-for-profit organisation in Colorado who've co-created the videos in US English and also US Spanish. So that allows them now to provide the programme in 2 different languages in a statewide implementation across Colorado. So these are the kinds of partners that we've been working with to co-create the materials. And one of the biggest criticisms of existing evidence-based interventions are that they're not very culturally sensitive. So if you are delivering triple P to a family in Salford and the video of the child cleaning the swimming pool, it doesn't go down very well for parental engagement. And we know that families are 4 times more likely to engage when programme materials are culturally relevant. And I don't mean translation, I mean culturally relevant. Families want to see families that they recognise, they want to see environments that they can relate to, and that's what gets parental engagement increased. So as I've said, we do co-design the programme materials with each country. And with that, we do lots of cultural adaptations. So to give you a couple of examples of that would be that when we went to America to make the videos there, we wanted to film a video of the parent asking their child to clear the dishes away, and then they were going to do some descriptive praise. Very short video. And this was a Hispanic family, and the parent said to me, "But I would never ask my child to do that." And I said, "Okay, can you explain?" She said, "Well, I'm the mum, and in Hispanic culture, I do everything around food. I would never ask my child to clear the dishes after dinner." So I said, "That's absolutely fine. What would you expect your child to do?" And she said, "Well, I'd expect her to hang up her clothes when I've washed them for her." So I said, "Let's get to the bedroom and film that." So that's just one example of cultural adaptation. Another example was actually when we made the videos in the UK, we used the same Danish camera person that we'd used there, called Torsten. And we were doing a video with two siblings playing a card game. And he started the shot quite close up with the intention of zooming out. And they were playing the card game, and suddenly they went, "Snap!" That's what happened. That's what happened to Torsten. He dropped his camera and fell backwards. And I said, "Torsten, are you okay? Like, what's the matter?" And he said, "I did not expect that." And I said, "Do you not play Snap in Denmark?" And he said, "No." So it's really easy to make these assumptions that we all play Snap. I was like, every family in England's played Snap. What are you talking about? So it's just so important. It's so incredibly important to get this right. So we've done lots of cultural adaptations. Even the US English book, UK English book, it's anglicised English, it's American English. We've changed the words from, pavement, sidewalk, trash can, bin. We've changed the names of the kids, we've changed the names of some of the metaphors, scenarios, because they have to fit the culture. So we do a lot of consultation. We work with lots of international organisations with experience, we work with lots of families, and we've even tested the books with families first before we even go to print on them. So we get a lot of feedback before we finalise. And one of the key things that we try to do is keep the cost down of the programme, because remember, we want to make it cost effective. So the videos, there's 43 videos in the programme. They're between 60 and 90 seconds long, and there's one core message in each video. So they're not scripted, they will be live videos that we make, but they deliver one core message to keep it nice and simple. And we filmed this in 7 days. We work 15-hour days, we go out to the multiple families, it's a lot of coordination before we go out, and we film and edit, and I leave the country with every video finalised on a hard drive ready to upload onto the internet, onto our website. So that's how we make it cost effective, because it's actually something you can do easier, and I can tell you it's about the 10th of the cost of a Norwegian translation of a very big manual. So it's a lot of fun, but hard work. And this little beauty should be an example. Where's the mouse? There it is, okay. So this is just an example of one of our UK videos, just so you can see what they look like.
You pass the ball to me. You're shooting. Got good skills. You're like David Beckham. Lad, you've got a good touch. Yeah, got good balance. You're a good player. Excellent.
What was interesting is when we made that video in Slovenia, the dad just spontaneously said, "Oh, you're like Ronaldo." So again, it just shows the cultural shift. Oh dear, no.
Right.
We don't want to play. We don't want to see it again, do we? How do I change this now? Let's see if this one works. Yes. Okay. So today we have made the programme in 7 countries with in 8 different languages, and we've got a couple of other countries on board and on the way as well. And as you can see, we've got national implementations in Slovenia, across Colorado, Denmark, Norway. We've got trainers already developed in the Netherlands, and a national implementation in Iceland as well. So again, just to give you a flavour of what this kind of looks like, this is the same video, so this is play with descriptive commenting, child-led play. And so this is kind of the English version of the video. I'm going to show you very small bits of it. Okay, and then show a little bits of the video. And then this is the US one.
I see you're taking some of the Legos off.
US Spanish. Oh no, not that one, sorry, it's this one.
Lo abriste la puerta.
They're so cute, aren't they? But you can see they're not scripted. We just set the parents up to do some child-led play, and then that's how we make the videos and replicate them. Okay, so again, going back to the research that says why are evidence-based interventions hard to scale? Well, often it's stated that they are difficult to implement, and there's lots of reasons for this. Some of that is about the rigidity and the expense and all the things that we've already talked about. But what the implementation science says to us is that you should do these things. So we have built a program to scale from the outset. That's what implementation science says you need to do. So that's what we've done. It says that you have to have local supervisors and trainers. If you're going to reach scale, you can't have 6 trainers in the world, like incredible it is. You have to have people locally who can do that and that can sustain it and retrain your workforce when people leave, because there's a high turnover of those staff quite often. It also says that you need to include outcome measures. So as part of the Invest in Play programme, once you're trained, you get access to a free to use database which will collect outcome measures pre, post and follow-up. It's GDPR compliant. And it allows people to send the questionnaires out to parents who can do them on a mobile or a laptop, sends them back to you, automatically scores them and gives you pretty little graphs. Why is this important? Because as a service you can then show your funders, your commissioners, that you're having an impact on child outcomes. And if you do that, you're more likely to get funding. So that's part of the sustainability model. And our core mantra is keep it simple. Just keep in the things that make the difference and take everything else away. It's easy for me to sit here and say people like it, but countries have taken it on nationally very quickly. We've been going for 2 years. But the facilitators do tell us that this programme is easier to implement, it's less time consuming to prepare for, it's really rewarding and it's very effective. So it's really important that we hear that feedback. And just obviously one of the biggest questions that we're going to get asked is, but you've only been going 2 years, where's your evidence base? So first of all, we built it on an evidence base of what we know works for 50 years. But it takes time to do randomised controlled trials, which are ongoing. So what happened is a Dutch researcher approached us and said, well, one of the quickest ways to get you to level 3 on the Foundation's guidebook is if we come along and do a benchmark study to benchmark you against a gold standard intervention like Incredible Years. So Patty Lighton did a meta-analysis a few years ago, published a paper, 14 randomised controlled trials of Incredible Years. And she didn't just write a review of the papers, she went and got all the original data, pulled it, calculated it, and the review said Incredible Years is super duper effective, okay? So that's the data set we've been benchmarked against. And so what our outcomes show is that on the child behaviour inventory, we get the same effect size as Incredible Years. If you look at the bar chart on the right, Invest in Play is the first column, Incredible Years is the second column, control group is the third. And if you look on the left, Invest in Play is the top line, so actually our children are at a high level of difficulty at baseline. What's interesting also is that in the benchmarking test, if you look at the bar chart again, then we are actually getting twice the effect size on reducing parenting stress than Incredible Years. And again, on a population with a high level of stress at baseline. And I think the reason this is because of the red brick and the parental self-efficacy model that we've built into the programme. We're getting parents self-regulated first. It's a bit like getting on a plane. And when they say put your own oxygen mask on first before your child, get yourself in order before you can be the best parent possible. And that's what we've tried to do. And finally, the last marker of why evidence-based interventions are hard to scale is that they are super duper expensive. Most of them are for-profit companies, unfortunately. I know that MST, Functional Family Therapy, in incredible years are now owned by an American private equity firm. So they're an investment company, it's there to make money, and they've got the monopoly on some of the most evidence-based programs on the planet. That's not going to help us reach scale and help families. So in order to try and tackle that, we are a not-for-profit organisation. We're a UK registered company. All the money that we make goes back into the organisation. We don't own it. Invest in Play owns our intellectual property rights. So we've built our organisation to be sustainable from the outset. It's not dependent on a single programme developer or a single person, in fact. We do all the filming in 1 week, as I've mentioned, and all the materials are online, so it's fairly easy to update. It's kind to the planet. And we built a modular system, so things can be flexible in their design in terms of changing just one video or not. The benchmark study also showed that Invest in Play is half the cost of incredible years to implement and to deliver. So we know that it takes less preparation time. And this is a summary of the findings. The paper will be submitted for publication soon. And the other additional things about the programme are that parents said that they were much more satisfied on every measure on programme materials than against incredible years, because of course they're culturally sensitive, I assume, and people can relate to them. And we deliver the intervention in fewer sessions. Okay, there we go. If you want to watch the video, it's parents talking about Invest in Play. It's on the website. So to summarise, Invest in Play is a programme that was built for scale and sustainability from the outset. It is evidence-based. It's been co-created and co-designed for cultural sensitivity. It's cost-effective and it's easy to keep up to date. And the final thing I want to say to you is that if you are playing the pedal conference bingo, almost, there you go.